In this video, we're going to talk about the Electoral College. This is something that perplexes students, it perplexes Americans, it perplexes everybody. And so I want to explain how the process works. And in the next videos, I will give you arguments in favor and against the Electoral College. The arguments against are pretty widely known, so I'm really interested in the arguments in favor. Whether you agree with me or not is a separate issue, but I do want to put the argument in favor out there for students to at least have to wrestle with. So when we're talking about the Electoral College, we're only talking about presidential elections. And so this might be news to some of you, but when we vote for president, when you vote for president, if you vote, you're not actually voting for president. What we do not do in this country is have an election for president, add up all the votes, and then the person with the most votes wins. That's how we vote for senators. That's how we vote for members of the House. That's how in California we vote for our state assembly, our governor, our state senate. That's how we do almost every other election, but not the president. Now that doesn't mean that the popular vote is unimportant when it comes to voting for president. The thing is that the Constitution gave states the authority to run elections. And so our presidential elections are really 51 elections. 50 states plus Washington, D.C., they all have their own votes. And then the popular vote is used within each state to allocate the electors. The states decide which electors are going to go to the Electoral College and cast their votes. Now, it's important to keep in mind too that when electors are chosen, they vote for president and vice president. Their vote counts for both. As you may recall from earlier lectures, it used to be that the way it worked was the candidate with the most votes and a majority became president. The candidate with the second most votes became vice president. And that created a bunch of problems, right? Because sometimes you would have a president who won and then a vice president who disagreed and ran against the president but got the second most votes. So now we vote for president and vice president at the same time. So how are electors chosen, these people who go to the Electoral College? Well, it varies from state to state. Some states do conventions. Some states give the governor authority to select electors. In some cases, they let the candidates select their electors. So what that means is if you have a Republican presidential candidate, in some states, the Republican candidate will select which electors are going to go to the Electoral College. If the Republican wins in that same state, the Democratic candidate will select electors who will go to the Electoral College if the Democratic candidate wins. But regardless of the method by which electors are chosen, electors are always really strong, loyal partisans. Oftentimes they hold leadership positions in their state. So the chairman of a state Republican Party might be chosen as elector. The head of a large city, like if you're the chairman of the Democratic Party of Los Angeles, you might be chosen as an elector. These are people who have a reputation for being real loyal to the party. And that winds up being important for this reason. And I know this seems odd, but it's true, so you need to know. There's nowhere in the Constitution that requires electors to vote for the winner of the popular vote in their state. Now, when when a candidate wins the popular vote in the state, we say that that elector is pledged to that candidate. But there's nothing in the Constitution that requires an elector to vote for the candidate to whom they're pledged. Now, actually, the Supreme Court recently ruled that states can fine, punish, or remove electors who don't vote for the candidate for whom they're pledged. I think 33 states have laws that require an elector to vote for the candidate to whom they're pledged. They can be fined, they can be removed and replaced with another elector who will vote properly. There's a variety of ways that that can be remedied. These electors who don't vote for the candidate to whom they're pledged are referred to as faithless electors. The thing that you need to know about faithless electors is that they have never determined the outcome of an election, ever. 99% of electors vote for the candidate to whom they're pledged. And so you'll hear long discussions about faithless electors. But the reality is that they don't make that much of a difference because they're picking loyal partisans who are going to vote for the candidate to whom they were pledged to vote for. In fact, I think historically, most of the times when people have voted for somebody other than to whom they were pledged, it's because the candidate to whom they were pledged had died from the time the election took place until the actual meeting of the Electoral College. It does happen. It's periodically it happens. It's usually a statement, some sort of statement an elector is trying to make, but it never affects the outcome of an election. So I'm not going to worry about it too much, and neither should you. The Constitution also gives the state the authority to decide how electors are selected, not how they're picked, but how they're going to be allocated to candidates. Let me explain. In 48 states and Washington, D.C., they have what's called the winner-take-all rule. The winner-take-all rule. And what that means is whichever presidential candidate gets a plurality of the votes, and a plurality means more votes than the other person, whichever candidate gets a plurality of the votes winds up getting all of that state's electors. So if a candidate is running in California and they win California by 1 vote, they get all of California's electoral votes. If they win California by 1 million votes, they get the same number of electors. If everybody in California votes for that candidate, they get the same number of electors. It doesn't matter how much you win by, just that you win. So 48 states plus the District of Columbia have the winner-take-all rule. Now, oftentimes you'll hear people talk about abolishing the Electoral College, right? As I'll explain in another video, the problem isn't really the Electoral College. The problem is the winner-take-all rule if you think it's a problem. Now, 2 states have something other than the winner-take-all rule. They have what's called the district plan. And so the way this works is the candidate that wins a plurality vote in a congressional district will get 1 elector. And then the candidate who wins the plurality for the entire state will get 2 electors. And so in the remainder of this video, I'm going to show you how the district plan. So what you're looking at here is a map of Nebraska, one of the 2 states that has the district plan. And Nebraska has 3 congressional districts. You can see Congressional District 1 is the area in green. Congressional District 2 is in blue, and Congressional District 3 is sort of that cream colored. I wasn't exactly sure what to call that, but I'm going to call it cream. And so the thing about these districts that you notice right away is that they're very different in size. The Congressional District 3 is like an agricultural area. Congressional District 2, and that's why it's so big, because there's mostly corn being grown there, and I think football players as well. In Congressional District 1, it's a smaller area, but part of the reason it's smaller, because there's a lot of agriculture there as well, is because Lincoln, Nebraska is in that state and it's got a large population. Congressional District 2, the blue area, the reason that's so small is that's where Omaha is, and there's some big areas and some college towns, so the population is larger. So each one of these districts has a population that is more or less the same. So here's how the congressional, so that's where it says population in District 1, District 2, and District 3 are equal. Now, first, how many electoral votes does Nebraska have? How many do they get? Well, hopefully you said 5. And why do they have 5? Because the number of electoral votes that a state gets is equal to the number of members of the House, and there are 3 congressional districts, so they have 3 members of the House, and 2 senators, so they have 5. So how does a district plan work? Well, imagine that in this election, let me move my face out of the way here. Imagine in this election, a presidential election, the Republican candidate gets 53% of the vote, and the Democratic candidate gets 47% of the vote. So the Republican candidate won, and so the Republican candidate wins 1 electoral vote. Now, suppose in the 2nd congressional district, the Democrat won. It's a college town. Younger people often vote Democratic, so the Democrat wins 56 to 44. Since they won that congressional district, they would get 1 electoral vote. Then in Congressional District 3, this large agricultural area, the rural agricultural areas tend to vote Republican. The Republican wins 62% to 38%, and so the Democratic candidate, the Republican candidate, would get 1 more electoral vote. Then, if you look at the overall state population, 53 voted for the Republican, 47% voted for the Democrat. The Republican would get 2 more for winning the entire state. And so as a result, using the district plan, a Republican would get 4 electoral votes, and the Democrat would get 1 electoral vote for winning the 2nd congressional district. Now, like as I said before, most states have a winner-take-all rule. And so if Nebraska used a winner-take-all rule, how would it work out? Well, they wouldn't even be looking at the congressional districts, they would just look at the state total. And since 53% voted for the Republican and 47% voted for the Democrat, the Republican would get all 5 electoral votes and the Democrat wouldn't get any. So that's the difference between the district plan and the winner-take-all rule. And again, only 2 states use the district plan, Nebraska and Maine. Now in the next video, I'm going to talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of the Electoral College.